Again, we are going to look this week at another issue that is prevalent in society. And as I said before, the issue is not really so much with women, the issue is with men. So I begin by saying that the problems in society, a lot of them are perpetrated by men. Now, I'll proceed this by saying a lot of men aren't going to like what I'm going to say this morning. But I don't care. I'm going to say what needs to be said, and I only have one master, and that master is the truth. Not any God, but the truth. And so, you cannot think that you are spiritual people, come and sit in the temple, things are fine and dandy, when like a rotten fruit, looks nice on the outside, but rotten to the core. Unacceptable. Today, we are going to look at this big issue of abuse, specifically domestic abuse. And the issue I have to take with this, as I said, men. Now, again, in Sri Ramcharitamanas, you find examples of everything. It's just a matter of knowing where to look. So, we are in Sundarkand today, pages 542, 543. And this incident has to do with this character we know as Ravan. Ravan embodies everything that is wrong with men in society. And Sri Ram embodies those, qualities that are desirable in men in society. So as I mentioned, because a lot of these religious institutions are driven by men, you always hear what a woman is supposed to do. But you never really hear what the man is supposed to do. And the problem is, I think, for the large part, a lot of women do what they're supposed to do. But somehow or the other, they always get in the blame. The man could do whatever, but the woman gets the blame. That is not right. So today, let's look first at Ravan, his attitude. And from there, we will delve deeper now into the psychology of men, how men behave, and what women who are victims of abuse and men who are perpetrators of abuse, what you need to do. So we begin on page 542. This chaupai begins, Sita tai mama krita apamana. And for those of you looking online and on television, you would see the dohas and translation being put up there so you can follow along if you don't have your copies. We begin. Sita tai mama krita apamana. Sita tai mama krita apamana. Kati hu tava sir kathina kripana. Kati hu tava sir kathina kripana. Nahita sapadi manu mama bani. Nahita sapadi manu mama bani. Sumukhi hoti na tajivan hani. Sumukhi hoti na tajivan hani. Devotees here, Ravan kidnapped Sita, another man's wife, and he has her in this garden. Keeping her there, he's trying to persuade her, to control her, to get her to do what he wants. Sita, of course, doesn't take this nicely at all. And so she tries to put Ravan in his place. So she told him, Ravan, what you have done is wrong. I'm not going to speak to you. She didn't even look at him directly. She spoke to him through a blade of grass. And she said, Sriram, my Sriram will come for me. Your days are numbered. And in a sense, she rebuked him, told him to, change his ways. What he's doing is wrong. Now we get into what Ravan's response was. He said, Sita, you have insulted me. Therefore, with my sword, I will cut off your head. If you do not want me to do so, obey me at once, or you will lose your life. Threat, devotees, from Ravan. What happened next? Sham saroj dam sam sundar. Sham saroj dam sam sundar. Prabhu bhuj kari kar sam das kandhar. Prabhu bhuj kari kar sam das kandhar. So bhuj kantha ki tava asi ghora. So bhuj kantha ki tava asi ghora. Sunu साठ अस प्रवान पन मोरा. Sunu साठ अस प्रवान पन मोरा. Lovely as a string of dark lotuses, said Sita Devi, and mighty and long as an elephant's trunk are my lord's arms, O ten-headed Ravan. Either those arms shall have my neck, or else your dread sword. Hear me, you villain, I swear it solemnly. Sita ji is responding to Ravan, devotees. And now, in our final chaupai, Chandrahas har mama paritapam. Chandrahas har mama paritapam. Raghupati biraha anal samjatam. Raghupati biraha anal samjatam. Sital nisita bahasi bardhara. Sital nisita bahasi bardhara. Kah Sita haru mama dukha bhara. Kah Sita haru mama dukha bhara. Jaya Ram Sri Ram Jaya Jaya Rama. Jaya Ram Sri Ram Jaya Jaya Rama. Sri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Rama. Sri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Rama. Bole Sri Raja Ramachandra ki Jai. Sita ji, devotees, said finally, put an end, O Chandrahas. And Chandrahas is the name of Ravan's sword. Put an end, O Chandrahas, to the burning anguish of my heart, born of the fire of separation from Sri Raghunath. The blade, this sword that you wield, is cool, sharp, and kind. Rid me of my burden of grief. So, devotees, classic example. We have Ravan, who is a man, someone who feels entitled, someone who wants to be in control, to the extent where he had a wife, he saw another man's wife, And he decided he wanted to take her for his own. Take her for his own. And so he kidnapped Sita Devi. And now essentially what he's doing here, he is forcing himself on her. And what we are going to do is extrapolate from this situation, because this typifies, is typical of a pattern of behavior of a lot of men. A lot of men. The word Ravan in Sanskrit means to roar, to cry out, to scream out. It also means, fickle, unsteady. And this is the attitude we are talking about. So we're not concerned if Ravan existed and whatever the story is. We're talking right here, right now. This quality of Ravan exists in many men in society today. Evidence? Well, you just read the newspapers. And some of these stories hit home. We're intimately familiar with people where the husband would kill the wife, then kill himself. The husband will kill the children, kill the wife, then kill himself. The husband will kill the children in front of the wife, then kill the wife, then kill himself. Domestic abuse, given the COVID period, was on the rise. Men are home more often and abuse. Now, of course, abuse goes both ways, but devotees, the cases of a woman abusing a man, both emotionally and physically, are quite small compared to the cases of men abusing women. So I'm not even going to consider that as an argument. Because what happens with some men, first of all, yeah, but women abuse men too. Stay quiet. You're talking rubbish. So I have to speak to men how men know, because men like to jump on a high horse. Nothing wrong, I am the man. And I'll come to that in a bit. But for this purpose here, leave women alone. I want you to assume for a moment, even though it might be hard for you to do, that the women are not at fault. It's your fault. We always hear this. Everybody else. The problem is everybody else except me. So men especially, listen carefully. Ravan has this attitude where he's entitled. He must control. Now, he picked up the sword to threaten Sita Devi. In other words, how men like this behave? Like little children throwing a tantrum. They so want to control, they so feel they own you, they want you to do what they want to do, that they threaten you, basically. They beat up upon you over and over again to make you feel essentially, and I'm speaking to women now, that it is your fault. When all this time is not the fault of the woman at all, it is the fault of the man. Ravan picked up this sword, Chandrahas. What does Chandrahas mean? Chandra means moon. And in Hinduism, Chandra or moon has to do with your mind. Has means to separate or cut up then. It also means pride, ignorance. But really, it means, destroy, to kill, to cause fear. So Chandrahas literally means causing fear, division in the mind of somebody else. So this is the weapon, the key tool that abusive men use. Ravan uses Chandrahas. So if you look at it, Ravan and Chandrahas, Ravan and his sword, this exemplifies the behavior of the abusive man in society. Ravan means you feel entitled, you have a big ego, you want to be controlled. And whatever, if I'm going to use myself as an abusive man here, what I think is justified, what I think is right, what you think is of no importance, and you are of no value, especially to women. So this sword Chandrahas is the key technique now of what? Instilling fear and controlling the mind of the partner, mothers, sisters, and daughters. So now we could ask this question, if it is such a big problem in society, how can we understand it? What can we do about it? So there are different forms of abuse, okay? You have emotional abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, and physical abuse. And actually, many women have stated that emotional verbal abuse is even worse than physical abuse because it goes on for a very long period of time. You know, living with a man is easy. You have no idea how not easy it is. Okay? So dealing with men. Now, let us try to unpack this a bit and understand the psychology behind abusive men in society, which, as I said, I don't know if you're convinced or not, but many men are in this way. It is evidenced by what is going on. I don't think I have to convince you of that. An abuser refers to a man who uses a wide range of controlling, devaluing, and intimidating behavior. And it comes from what? From a sense of obsession, maybe jealousy, possessiveness, ownership, right? So a man gets married to somebody, he has a wife, and he feels that that woman is his property. She is to be controlled, or she no good. She might, any chance she gets, she might do whatever, and so I must keep in control all the time. That is the feeling. Now, of course, perpetrators of domestic abuse, all forms of abuse, they exist on a spectrum, right? So you have a family man, he might even realize he's verbally or emotionally abusing his wife or his children. He wouldn't even know. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have these master manipulators like Ravana, whose sole goal in life is to terrorize people, to terrorize their partners. So, whatever the aim of their abuse is, they all use similar methods. And this is what we're going to get into. So, as I said, this is for men to listen to, but the hard thing is men don't really change. I'll come to that in a bit. So, in the worst case, it is for women to understand what your place is and what you can do. Okay? So, coming back to the abusive man, you know, he wants to be a mystery. Okay, so let's take an example. You have a man, he's abusive to you. He tells you all sorts of things to control you, to devalue you. And it happens over time, over a long period of time. You're stupid, you know nothing, right? You make what I like to eat. What happened? You can't cook? These sort of statements over and over and over again destroys the self-esteem and mind of the mothers, sisters, and daughters. But the abusive man himself wants to remain a mystery. You know, he wants people to focus on everything else except the cause of his own behavior. So he will put up all sort of excuses. You know, it's your fault, it's not my fault, right? This is how you have to be. And so he puts the blame on you, mothers, sisters, and daughters, rather than himself. But devotees, abuse is not a product of bad relationships, and you cannot make things better, mothers, sisters, and daughters, by changing your behavior or attempting to manage your partner better. Abuse is a problem that lies entirely with the abuser. Let me say that again. Abuse is a problem that lies entirely with the abuser. Therefore, it is the man's problem. Don't let anybody, mothers, sisters, and daughters, tell you that it is your fault. No way. No way in hell. Yeah? So the first point, and ladies, you have to understand this. Sometimes in a problem, whatever, for help, you might go and talk to other people. You might go and talk to a man even. And will tell you this, that, and the other. Try to make you feel, well, it's your job to keep the home together. This rubbish. Total rubbish. Anybody who tells you that, disregard it completely. I would even go so far as to say, mothers, sisters, and daughters, do not go to any man I'll say this again. Do not go to any man for advice or help on domestic violence issues. There's a rare case where you have a man, don't even come by me. Don't come by me. You have the police, you have specialists, go to those people. But I would say, in the society we live in, to protect yourself, don't listen to what any man has to say, unless maybe he's an expert in this sort of area, right? But you are being controlled and manipulated left, right, and center. And I am a man and I'm saying it. Okay? So, if you feel like getting a little passionate, because I am, this is an issue close to my heart. You see, devotees, I detest when people who, children, women, who are physically not as strong, but they're taken advantage of by men repeatedly in society. Whether it's a leader, a man in the household, whatever, people in power, so to speak, always take advantage of those under them. Always, without exception. You've heard the statement, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Okay? So, the idea is you have to be aware of what's going on. And you see this thing about victim shaming, right? Something go wrong, is the woman's fault. Society going bad, is the woman's fault. Nonsense. It's men's fault. If the men are the leaders, how is the woman's fault? But it's the woman's fault. You have to keep the family together. You have to keep society going. I call rubbish. Now, it mightn't be what you're accustomed hearing, but I said, I serve the truth. Okay? So men are responsible. I take responsibility. Other men should take responsibility for your own behavior. What are you, a child? So, let's look now at the abusive mind. What is a man really thinking when he's doing this? The first level is the abuser's thinking, how a man thinks. Secondly is how he learns what he saw growing up. And the third is the reward he reaps from controlling his partner. So, devotees, essentially it boils down to this. One, the psychology, how a person thinks. If you're small and you grow up, you see men treating women a certain way, laugh at women a certain way, feel they have to do so and so. Even in scriptures you find a woman is this, that, and the other, then you believe it. And I keep coming back to beliefs. Your beliefs determine your behavior. Sanatan Dharma says ahimsa, not causing pain to anybody else. So you could believe what you want, but you want to justify your actions to abuse people and then say you practicing ahimsa, makes no sense. Okay? So you're not causing pain to anybody else. That's the key principle. Yet still, you see your father in the family talking to your mother a certain way, hitting your mother, beating you and the other children, etc., etc. So it has to do with how a man is thinking, the attitudes and beliefs. So his psychology. And the second thing that causes this really is patriarchy. You know what patriarchy is? That is society, the belief in society that a man must always be in charge. You know? And in Hinduism, the son is the best thing out. The daughter, right, but you have to give she away. The son is the best. The son carries on the lineage. And this sort of behavior leads to extreme cases where, people kill their daughters, all right, in India, wherever else. They don't like what she's doing, they kill the girl. All of these sort of things come from what? Just a belief that women are of a lesser value than a man. Isn't it? I'm saying these things and you might go yes or no. Some of you things might be burning up in your head and I say good. Because you can't say love all, whatever, ahimsa, and then you feel that a woman is lesser than a man. How is that possible? How? So really it comes from the way of thinking, how men have been brought up, what they are exposed to, and basically think, look, I in charge. I want so and so, I controlling you, you have to do what I want. If not, boom, boom, boom. You lash out. Chandrahas. Chandrahas, left, right, and center. And some of them use a real Chandrahas too, eh? Not so. A fella went home sometime the other day. He didn't like what his wife cooked. He pulled out his own Chandrahas, cutlass na, and he started to beat the woman with the cutlass out in the yard. Chandrahas, literally Chandrahas. How could we let these things go on, devotees, as a society? You see, but that's the problem. Because things like domestic violence, hush, 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 people like to push it one side. When it's eating away lives left, right, and center every single day. Everybody living in hell, but pretending like you're living in heaven. Make no sense? So, this is why men behave how they have to behave how they behave. But it's not how they have to behave or must behave. So what I want to say to you, devotees, is that, you have all sorts of myths. People try to justify why a man behaves like this. He was abused as a child, his previous partner hurt him, or he abuses those he loves the most. Yeah? He loses control. He's an angry man. He's a little crazy, He mentally ill. Every single one is a myth, is not true. Being an abusive person, devotees, is a choice. Let me say that again. Being an abusive person is a choice. It's not like you can't control yourself. Some men like to say, I can't control myself, I can't change. Are you a mumu? It is not because you cannot change, devotees. It's because you don't want to change. Isn't it? Your brain remains plastic. You could change anytime you want, but people don't change because in a point of privilege, who wants to give up a point of privilege and deal with all this issue? You don't want to do it? So all of these myths, surround, which I don't have time to go into. But basically, what to look out for. So the first question is, how do I know if I'm living with an abusive person, especially mothers, sisters, and daughters? He speaks disrespectfully about women. He is disrespectful to you. He is very controlling, very possessive, tell you what to wear, where to go, who to talk to, who not to talk to. Nothing is ever his fault, it's always your fault. He's self-centered. He gets angry very quickly in the relationship. He would intimidate you when he's angry. He has this general negative attitude towards women. However, when he's around people, you have the perfect relationship. Yeah. And sorry to say it again, but most of the people who are abusers, men, they're nice, high-standing members of society. And home, with their wife, with their children, they're like Ravana. As I said, you could ask my wife and children anytime. You can't ask me what kind of husband I am or what kind of father I am. You have to ask my family. And provided they're not afraid of me, then they will tell you the truth. You see? But you can't ask a man what kind of father you are. You go, yeah, real good. People always think they are better than they actually are. So, one, I put to you how to identify abusive, controlling behaviors. So ladies, if you have a husband like this, or girls, if you have a boyfriend like this, I'm sorry for you. Really, really I am. But the funny thing is that people don't realize this abusive behavior till it's too late. Because initially, he looked like a good man. Nice boyfriend, doing everything. Give it some time, a few years, and then you start to see it coming out. So unfortunately, it's not something you can pick up, before you go, honey, are you an abuser? And he'll go, no, honey, I'm not. And then you can't judge. It plays out itself. This behavior comes in time. And devotees, always remember this. You mustn't listen to what people say. You must watch what people do. Always. Look at the behaviors. Look at how they interact. Try to get out from them the attitudes to women very carefully before you make decisions. Now, in terms of people who abuse, you have a man in the house and you think he's an abuser. There are different types. And to make it simple, I'll just present two types for you. One, and I'm going to use an animal because he gets on like an animal, right? One is a cobra and the other one is a pit bull. So watch it. The cobra kind of man is the one who decides that I'm going to be an abuser, a controller, and whether he quarreling, he angry, or whatever, he is cool and calm inside. Meaning he knows what he's doing. cold, calculated. Right? Like a terrorist, I said. That is what it is. The other one is like the pit bull. You choke the dog in my back a bit, you choke the dog enough, the dog will let loose and bite off your head. So the pit bull kind of man is the one who, will take a little bit of choking up, but after a while, when he let loose, and total damage. And then, of course, you have what you call like the family-only batterer. Somebody, somehow or the other, every all spheres of life, real good. But you see in the home, Ravan. So, the cobra kind, he like that all the time. The pit bull kind, he probably like that all the time. But the family-only batterer, he saved this terrorist behavior only for the wife and children. These are the kinds of abusers. Okay? So, what happens now in the case of abuse? So now I'm speaking to the ladies and to the men who want to listen, who either care, who want to change yourself if you behave in this way, or just for your general knowledge, because men have to train other men. You understand? Fathers have to train sons. So we'll come to that in a bit. But first of all, there's what's called the cycle of abuse. So what happens in the home? What happens? There is always different phases. So the first phase is what you call the build-up phase. Something will, trigger the man. Suppose, let me use a trivia, let me use the food example. You want dal puri and tomatoes for dinner. But you come home and, of course, you start off by assuming it's the wife's job to cook, right? That's another story. But you come home and you get roti and fry aloo. Now, if it's me, I was like, all right, well, I like roti and fry aloo. Or if I don't like it, well, I'll go and sort something else. No problem. Some men get vexed. This is not what I want. You are doing your job. Blah, 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 blah. I wouldn't want to go what they say. But the idea is there's a trigger. So this triggers the man off now because you're not doing your job, what you're supposed to do. It's your fault. And it's not what I like. So there's some kind of build-up going on there. A trigger that sets it off. Start to quarrel. Start to get on. If this thing persists a little bit, then the second phase, what you have, the explosion. The man gets so vexed that he can't control it no more, or worse yet, he knows what he's doing, and he starts to lash out. Lash out both emotionally, verbally, and literally. Lash out. Hit up, beat up like that. I said like a little child throwing a tantrum. I don't get what I want. Wap, 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 wap. That is how abusive men behave. Very immature mentally. After the explosion, what happens now, and ladies pay attention, there's what you call the honeymoon period, which means that he realized what he did, and he still doesn't blame himself, but he's trying to pacify you. So he would apologize and say, this wouldn't happen again, I'm real sorry, what, I love you, darling, all of that. Right? That's the honeymoon period. And then afterward, you have a period of calm again. So nothing really happening much till you have a trigger again come. You buy doubles and he wanted aloo pie. And so the cycle goes again. So I'm using trivial examples here, devotees, but you could see this cycle goes on and on and on. Okay? And mothers, sisters, and daughters, the sad fact is, if you expect this to stop, I'm sorry to tell you that it really doesn't stop. So you might say the first time a man puts his hand on you is a one-off now. He couldn't control himself. Maybe he was drunk or high or something, right? And you say, all right, but bet you me, the probability that it will happen again is almost close to 1. It's very high, okay? So the thing about it is, once there's one abusive event in your life, mothers, sisters, and daughters, expect more to come. Don't sit down there and feel love conquers all and he go change. How many people you know really change? Very, very few. Okay? So, what happens here now with this cycle of abuse? This man will try all sort of techniques. And you know an interesting thing, devotees? Researchers, what they did, they compared what, prisoners of war, You see, Guantanamo and other places, you know how they will terrorize and try to get information from prisoners? It's the same techniques men use in the house. No joke. I was surprised. The same techniques. What are they? Using intimidation, using emotional abuse, using isolation, try to keep you by yourself, denying and blaming you, right? Using children to make you feel guilty, using male privilege, using economic abuse, don't give you any money or anything like that, refuse to take care so you go suffer, and using coercion and threats. All of these things together, this is the toolkit of the abuser. And everything I call there come from how you treat prisoners of war. So you married into a prison? I feel it's worse. Probably worse. All right. So, is it clear that we have a problem? Is it clear? Mothers, sisters, and daughters, is it clear to you that it is not your fault? If there's anything I get across today is that point, it is not your fault. If a man abuses you, lays his hand on you, it is not your fault. It is not your responsibility to fix him, okay? But it is your responsibility to stand up for yourself. Because to a certain extent, if you let them continue doing this, they're going to continue to do it. You understand? So now we come to the solution part. Well, how really then do we support a victim of abuse? Last part here now. So you're living with a Ravan. Unfortunately, you found yourself in this situation. What to do? And we have plenty Ravan, right? What to do? The bad news first. The bad news is, mothers, sisters, and daughters, I'm speaking to you now. They try to rehabilitate a lot of these men who are abusers, whatever else. But because this was in their thinking, it's so ingrained in them, the success rate to rehabilitate an abuser is very, very small. So the sad news is, to put it in simple terms, he's not really going to change. He might lay low for a while. Yeah? And the worst thing you could do is expose him. Expose him in public. Worst thing you could do, but then you have to look out for backlash. That's when you hear people line up with guns and shoot people and whatnot. Okay? So, it is unlikely, not impossible, that he would change. You see the men who probably get angry at home and they feel they have to lash out, but they don't have like the cobra or the pit bull in them. Probably some things could be done there, a little bit of talking and whatever else. But you see, it requires the willpower of the man to fix himself. And there are programs where they put men together and the success rate has been very, very poor. Because I name man. I name man, I know what I'm doing, you talking rubbish, I don't need to change, it's your fault. See? The thinking. So that's the bad news. So what can we do then? An abuser distorts the life and mind of his abused partner so that she becomes focused on him. The main way out of the abuse vortex, therefore, is to reorient your thinking so that you devote your attention to yourself and to your children. I read that. Straight piece of advice. So, in other words, devotees, women in this position, you stand up for yourself the first time something like this happens and say, I am not going to tolerate this. Now, the first step really is to identify what your partner is doing and why he's doing it. This is what I've told all of you, especially the ladies. So now you know it is not your fault. Again, it's not your fault. It is the man's fault. Secondly, the second step is what you do is you try to remove yourself. Remember upeksha? You can't go and dig up in something and expect to make it better. You have to remove yourself. Now, removing yourself doesn't mean getting up and leaving. Remember here, the main point is I am not telling ladies what to do. That's the worst thing. Because if I tell you what to do, aren't I being a controlling man? How I could tell you what to do? I could present the information to you, but you decide for yourself, given your circumstance. And it's always difficult when children are involved. So, you find yourself, ladies, in a domestic violence situation. What you do? Well, let me tell you what not to do. You go by the Pandit Pastor Imam. What they tell you? Oh, love heals everything. Give your heart to him fully. You would make everything right. I call rubbish. If you ask yourself how many of these people are actually trained, not what they think, what they read in the book, but actually trained. What is the evidence? How you know what you are telling people is the truth? I suspect the answer is very small. I could defend what I am telling you is based on research and evidence and other things. But in terms of what to do, it's up to you. But as I said before, ladies, probably do go by a man. Okay? So you have the religious people. If you go by a therapist, the therapist will tell you, well, it's because of his relationship with his father when he was young, and, it is manifested now, and blah, blah, blah. So a therapist will tell you something different. If you go by a brother or a sister, they might try to defend him. Oh, he's a good fella. You read in the papers, you go by the mother of the fella and try to tell her, no, he's a good boy. Mother taking up for the son, huh? What she know? It is your life. Most of the times the parents know what's going on. And devotees, I have a problem with men too. Something going on with their wife or whatever, and they run by the mother and father for everything. Mommy, daddy, fix it for me now. You're like a little child. Come on, man. Train yourself, work out with your partner. Don't run to your mother every little thing happens. I'm telling you as it is. This is what being a man is about. If you want advice, yes, but what happens is young fellas now, when they're inexperienced, they want to go by the mommy and daddy to fix everything for them. Grow up. Grow up. So, you go by your, brother, sister, mother, whatever. Right? And then you go by a friend or another lady, tell you, oh God, he crazy. Leave him one time. Go. Even that you have to take with a grain of salt, devotees. Even that you have to take with a grain of salt, because only you know your circumstance. And you see, there's this argument made for women that, you know what, you have to keep the home together. So you had to take licks. Now you see me? Our home is not a place where licks taking place. Simple. So if people abusing whatever, is not a home. So we're saving. That's my view. You understand? So you can't think of it. I would say better off you take your children and leave and go if you could, because they will grow up better without being in that environment. You want to stay there and make it a home and let them, take licks, children getting beaten up, wife getting beaten up, and at some point the man will kill all of them. That is what you want? Well, if you choose that, you go ahead. But to me, it makes no sense. No sense. So again, ladies, the choice is yours. The choice is yours what to do. And so, simple, I'm just going to wrap up now with some simple strategies, what you could do. If you're in a situation like this, or somebody, you have a friend, a mother, sister, daughter who comes to you and says, look, I have this situation, the man can't control himself, he's violent, what, he's seen bruises, what to do? First of all, don't pressure her, right? Be patient. Remember, that's the pressure she getting home, so you be patient. Don't talk down to her. Address her as an equal. Don't think you know what is better for her than she does. You are there to help and support. She will make the decision. Don't dominate the conversation, and don't, tell her that, or support that the man has the right to control her life. That is wrong. And don't assume or support the notion that this man understands the children better than the mother does. In most cases, that is not true. And don't think for her, because that's the abusive situation. A man always telling you what to do. Support her to show that she can think for herself. I have 2 daughters. Are you hearing me? Make sure that you think for yourself, and don't let no man tell you what to do. And Abhinav, if I only hear that you treat any woman any kind of way, is you and I to deal. But you see, devotees, the example is there. We talk about it. Okay? We discuss things. Everybody should be doing the same. The boys, the young men, they need to be trained by men who know that they are true men. Okay? So, in all of these things, devotees, I want to say, we're coming out of a time of being associated with the children's home. And again, society is rotten. The reason I'm getting so worked up about this is because when it hits home, then you see the children in our children's home, families all around. We have students in UTT there. You'd be surprised. All of the things you see in papers, the children come to university. We know how it is. It's just destroying lives everywhere. So, you know, child abuse is related to this. I didn't deal with that specifically. Here's mostly abuse against women, domestic violence, right? But, you know, always remember the children in this. So you and your wife, speaking to the men now, having whatever, don't quarrel, argue, whatever, in front of the children. Bad move. Because what you're doing is you're destroying them psychologically. All these things come out, and well, worse yet, if there's domestic violence and the children witness these things, what do you think is happening to them? But maybe the abusers can't identify with this because their selfish motives, everything's about them. When they fly off the hook, don't care who are wrong, what are wrong. Okay? So, all in all, devotees, let me put it like this. I'm going to summarize what I said this morning to make it very clear, in case there's any doubt. Domestic abuse, men abusing women and children, is dominant in society today. The reason for it is the way that men think. They have been brought up, and, you know, this position of privilege that they find themselves in. What you can do is, one, influence your friends who you know, your religious group, your relatives, for women to have the courage to stand up and say, abusing a woman is wrong, period. We are discussing, we are trying to logicize it, to look for blame. Abuse of women and children is wrong. Do not blame the victim. It is the fault of the abuser, and only the abuser. The abuser, mostly men, you've made a choice to behave like this. Either you change yourself or look out for consequences. And women don't, we have, you know, recourse to the law, the police and whatnot. I know how it is sometimes. Sometimes they don't want to believe the women. They treat these things as, you know, common issues. We need to prioritize on this. This is one of the most important things. Okay? Secondly, insist that women, and I'm insisting that you insist that there is dignity and respect in your relationship. From the time you pick up there is no dignity and respect, address it one time. If you leave it to carry on, your relationship is going to degenerate. Third, we want our young men, our boys, to be respectful, kind, responsible, and don't settle for less. Don't make jokes on women and say that this, that, and the other, which sometimes we do, but extreme forms of this leads up to them thinking it's okay to abuse women. They're lower than us. Fourth, remember, abuse doesn't come from people's inability to resolve conflicts. It comes from a person's decision, a man's decision, to claim a higher status than somebody else. It comes from a man's decision to think, I am better than a woman. She is lower than me. That's where it comes from. And so, devotees, we come back now to the basic principles of Sanatana Dharma, teaching equality, a deep respect for all human beings. We can't come and say, see God in all and then be behaving like this. Okay? And these are not simple problems to solve. As I said, these things have been propagated over generations. But if we don't stand up now, and I am standing up, well, I'm sitting down, but I'm standing up to say that you can't sit down and worry about what went on in the past, what. You have to look at now. Your responsibility. Young people, the time for the old people might go. But now, it is your chance to stand up for what is right based on principle, on your own logical thinking. And you decide if you're going to propagate this nonsense or not. You decide. And for goodness sake, women, educate yourselves. Educate yourselves. Don't just listen to what people telling you, or who you might think leaders telling you. Everybody is biased in their own way. I come back to this last point. I want nothing from you. All I would like to see is that you are able to make your own decisions. my children, everybody else, remember that your life doesn't depend on anybody else. Your life is about you. You have the decision to make, and don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. Okay? So, the lesson for men, come on. It's time to make a change, to discuss these things, bring it out in the open. Takes a bigger man to say, I've made mistakes, probably done these things, but I am going to change from now. Be aware. Train the children, the young boys, the right way to think of women. And on the other hand, women, remember, it's not your fault. Traditionally, you've been pressurized, put down, not allowed. This sort of equality thing, they say it on the surface, but it's not there in the action. So it is up to you now to stand up and demand, because really, you have more power than men do, whether you realize it or not. Okay? So devotees, remember Ravan, remember Chandrahas. And I could say something to rhyme with that, but don't be like that. Don't be like the Chandrahas, okay? Bole Sri Umapati Mahadev ki Jai.